Well, hello, my friends. It's my first YouTube live, and I wanted to give you some comments on this Kavanaugh hearing that I'm not hearing many people talk about. First of all, I am shocked at the risks that are being piled up by the delay on this vote for Kavanaugh. Because the delay for confirmation is just going to be more time for the entire industrial media complex to try to dig up everything they can. Some student in Yale is going to say, I saw Brett throw beer at somebody. And then you're going to have the delay for Kavanaugh's confirmation is simply going to be more time for this aggressive activist pummeling of squishy Republicans. You saw what happened to Jeff Flake, ambushed at the elevator, and you have to sit back and go, what in the world is happening? What they're looking for is that the FBI, which I'm suspicious about to begin with, because this is Comey's, deep bench team, is going to be looking for any kind of unconnected and embarrassing further destructive narrative that can be leaked to the press over the next 5 days to help to confirm this instability of Kavanaugh as a candidate. So it goes without saying that the demand for delay is going to be met with more demands for delay, and then when the investigation is wrapped up, no matter how it's wrapped up, it's going to be unfair, and it's going to be thrown back as being the corrupt rush of Republicans to get their guy in. But what nobody really did was cross-examine Dr. Ford. By the way, Dr. Ford was presented as a psychologist. She's not. And I think that's all part of the branding ploy of the left. She is an academician, meaning her degree work is in the psychology of education. She's not a psychologist. It's a misrepresentation, like the polygraph test. Polygraph tests are supposed to be extensive. They're not supposed to be 2 questions, so that's irrelevant, that whole argument about a polygraph. She has a history of being aligned with the left, and so it's not as though she's running as a neutral party. What's particularly strange is that she lied about the flying situation. She actually jet sets back and forth. She had made several trips to Washington to prepare for the public hearing, for the meeting in front of the Senate. She was represented by her goofy attorney as having flashbacks whenever she's in a closed and confined space. Well, the truth of the matter is, the Senate volunteered to go to California to go meet with her, but she was in Delaware at the time. She was going back and forth from LA to DC. So she wasn't even in California to do a meeting. She requested supposedly anonymity. She didn't want to be known, but she was reaching out to the Washington Post, which is a sympathetic tool of the left wing for publications. People who don't want to be known aren't sending communication to the Washington Post. Every single one of her witnesses refutes her story. They have no memory of the gathering she's talking about. And that includes her best friend, who says, I believe her, but I don't recall ever meeting Kavanaugh or being at a party. Her team was so disingenuous in representing her that they never mentioned the fact that from her notes from her therapist in 2012 actually refute her version. She originally claimed there were 4 boys who tried to rape her. She was in her late teens, in the mid-1980s, and then she said, no, it was 1 rapist and 1 bystander, and she was 15. But she refused to give her therapist notes over to the Senate Judiciary Committee. But she testified that she could pin down the date to 1982 because she didn't have a driver's license. So if she didn't have a driver's license, that meant that someone had to take her to the party and someone had to take her home. And nobody's stepping up to even talk about giving her a ride to the party or a ride from the party. So, you know, if you after you go through an event like that, you think you'd be talking to somebody who's driving you home, but there's no one there to drive her home. And but this guy, Mark Judge, who's the guy that they're trying to pin as being the co-conspirator with Kavanaugh, he actually wrote a book, and his memoirs were publicly accessible, so that he himself said that he was working at a grocery store at a Safeway during the time this happened. So now she could place this story about him working at a Safeway. But then she says that 6 to 8 weeks after the incident, she ran into him, and her mother drove her to the Safeway. But now her mother can't even confirm that that happened. So 5 times during her testimony, she's mentioning that very date. But there's no confirmation from her mother about this, you know, Safeway trip where she saw him, Judge, that is. All of her 4 key witnesses refute the allegations. And like I said, the notes from her therapist can't confirm anything because they're not accessible. So, and what you miss is the main Senate argument was giant blown up copies of a 17-year-old's yearbook. And that was meant to just beat on him for where he was. Remember when you were 17? What your yearbook might look like? So that was their basic pounding. And I couldn't believe that nobody really examined her. Everybody's, you know, different people have different opinions about the woman who was doing the prosecutor who was doing the she got pulled off like halfway through because it was just painful to see her ploddingly try to lay down a trail of information, missing the fact that this was a media event. This wasn't really a information gathering event. All the information that could be gathered was gathered, and so Rachel got pulled off, you know, halfway through because she wasn't really helping. Now, what she did establish was that the whole lying about the flying thing, which tells you that this was being dragged on in order to create the media circus event that Lindsey Graham complained about. So when you look at all this in that context, you're not hearing any of this, of course, in the media. And that's because they want the time. They want the time to try to dig up and build their case. And then you got Michael Avenatti, his supposed girl with the train rape story. That whole thing's like a train wreck. It's falling apart. But they're going to come up with more stuff. And all that I can say is that those that are praying, what you want to do is you want to continue to pray that truth is going to come forth and that the veil of lies and inconsistencies and incongruence that are in this story are going to be further developed. And I have no doubt that Dr. Ford experienced something traumatic. You can see she's emotionally, you know, vulnerable in many ways. So she had some kind of an experience. But the premise that, you know, that women are to be believed and men are not to be believed, that's the classic leftist garbage that and anyone who's biblically congruent knows that, you know, the story of Joseph tells you that Potiphar's wife couldn't be trusted in that story. So women and men have no corner on sin. Man is a fallen creature, and women can be just as capable of misrepresenting history as men can. And in this case, I think what we're dealing with is what Elizabeth Loftus from the University of Washington points out as a neuropsychiatrist. She says that false memories are constructed by combining actual memories with the content of suggestions received from other people. And in a small study performed by Loftus, this researcher, she said fully 25% of respondents remembered false events constructed for them and insisted those events were actually real. So, you know, you think about all this. That's the findings from basic psychology and neuroscience studies indicate that memory is a restructuring process that is susceptible to distortion. So the commonly held belief among the general public that an eyewitness's confidence in the accuracy of memory is a strong indication of the actual occurrence of the memory is not true. So that's why no allegation, no matter how credible on the surface, should be taken at face value unless there's corroborating evidence. When you've got all your people you're quoting saying it didn't happen, it ought to raise some flags. So when you don't have a single witness to corroborate a story, what you have is the emotion people feel as they're listening to the story. But we have a history of false claims against men. There was the UVA fraternity that accused of gang rape by Jackie Coakley of Rolling Stone magazine. Remember that? And that was refuted and proved to be fiction. Military contractors accused of gang rape in Iraq by Jamie Lee Jones, which was believed by the media, was refuted and proven to be totally false. The Duke lacrosse team that supposedly was involved with rape, that was refuted and proved to be completely false. So I don't know where the left gets away with this narrative that women are to believe and men should shut up. That's an embarrassment for the state of Hawaii to have a senator that would even say something as ludicrous as that. So there you have it. There's my thoughts on the Kavanaugh hearing as they are right now, and we'll be in Washington to give you the rest of the story when it happens. Fair enough? I'll be there this week. Bye-bye.